Hello and welcome to this week's Property Legacy podcast. Today we're here with Mark Muslek. He's from a financial background. He's also a property investor for quite a number of years and has a hell of a lot of experience, and he's my go-to guy if I've got any questions about financing, how to set up a deal or anything like that. So today we're all talking about, instead of looking at for investors, what can we do with the financial institutions? What can we achieve that way? That you don't need an investor and you can buy as many properties as you want. So, Mark, introduce yourself.
Right, well, my name's Mark Muslek. Bought my first property 23 years ago in Crewe, 2 up, 2 down. Sold it last year. Got serious in property 7 years ago, and I've done over a dozen come-to-resis, 3 or 4 apart hotels, a bunch of title splits. So I concentrated on the bigger stuff after I had a few buy-to-lets. I retired about 3 years ago, and after a week my wife told me to get out and do something. So I decided to go into finance because I'd used it a lot anyway in the projects I'd done. So I switched into finance. I am a specialist finance broker dealing with bridging development finance. And I think there's a couple of things that make me a bit different. One is because I've got a background in development. The first thing I do when I talk to clients is actually stack the deals. And if they don't work, I tell them they don't work. Go and find something else. I won't put someone in a deal if I can't get them out and if they're not going to make money on it. But
I think that's the big difference with you. Whenever you go to a mortgage advisor, they'll just get you a mortgage.
yes.
They'll get you the deal no matter what, and it's up to you to make sure it works. But what we've had this conversation a few times, and I still haven't found something where you said it'd be a good idea yet. So I'm still working on it. So commercial to resi is something that you specialise in, and you have ways of putting the deals together that you can check that they stand up within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I've seen you do your talk a couple of times now, and it's really good. But also having that somebody to talk about a deal with, and then to say yeah or nay, and actually know that it will work. And that's a huge benefit for anybody looking for finances, whether it's with an investor or whether it's with commercial finance. You need somebody that is honest. Because a lot
it's
of
just another set of eyes, isn't it? And I'm not saying I'll be right every time, but if I flag up some potential issues with the deal, it gives you food for thought to go and double check the numbers, or is that really right? And I also sort of know what the lenders are looking at, because obviously I do it all the time. So even if you think a deal stacks and I do, I'll know it might flag for a lender. They'll think, actually, that's a bit cheap. Why? You understand what I'm saying? Because I know what sort of numbers they're working with as well. And absolutely. And it's a people business. You know me reasonably well. I call a spade a spade. And sometimes I'll get people coming back to me 3 or 4 years later saying, you told me this deal was rubbish 4 years ago. I really like what you said. It's the first one I've had since. Can you help me? It comes round again. The universal karma does pay off.
I think we always tell everybody they should build a team of people, advisors, even if you don't use them very often, it's just somebody you get advice off. It's all about getting your team together. And whether you meet through networking, whether you meet through just bumping into each other down a pub, or whether it's something more formal, it's just picking the right people to be part of your team. And that's the whole point.
I think it's really important as well to have somebody on your team that listens when you say no sometimes. So sometimes I think with any types of like projects where you're investing money, of course you want it to work, of course you want to have this. Unfortunately, with a lot of things that we see on social media, everyone thinks it's really easy and we just throw a bit of money at it and we'll get that exact same thing. And actually there's always that work that goes on behind the scenes, and if you're not led in the right direction, people can get themselves in a messy situation, and it can be really, really difficult to get themselves out of that, or to actually get out of the deal when they're that deep into something and they've already invested a lot of time and money. So I think it's really important to have people from a professional standpoint that have enough about them to go, no, that's not right, and no, I don't think that that's the best option.
Because I know we all look at business as being non-emotional, but when you've found a deal that you think's going to work and you put a lot of work into it, you do get attached to that deal, and you need somebody to say, well, hold on, have you thought about this? Or have you...
No, you do. And to be honest, it's down to personalities as well. I've always, one of my early girlfriends, I'm talking a long time ago, used to call me Spock. Right, it's not because I've got pointy ears. But I'm not emotive about business things. And it's not a skill, it's just something I've got. Right? And in fact, in this industry, that's very useful. So don't get attached to deals. It either works or it doesn't. The numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
As long as you do the numbers correctly, they don't lie.
Yeah.
And what you were saying about a team is absolutely vital.
Yeah.
I've got a deal completing tomorrow, which is, and I might as well talk about it because it's pertinent to what we're talking about in terms of what we can do with bridging and development finance that's different. And this deal that completes tomorrow, I got a phone call 3 months ago. I'll call him Fred. Okay. So Fred rang me, picked the phone up. He said, "Hi Mark," he says, "you'll never guess who this is." And I knew straight away. So I recognised his voice, even though I've not seen him in several years. He says, "I've got a problem, can you help?" I said, "I'll try." He said, "I've got this opportunity to buy a 3-bed semi in North London for 275 grand. It's worth 450. Not seeing a problem yet. I've got no money." When you say you've got no money, do you mean no money, or what do you mean? So it's got enough for stamp duty and legals, because if he can't cover that, then nobody can help him. So I said, okay, so what you're telling me is you want the full 275 grand, the full purchase price. He said, "I can do it." I said, "But it'll cost you. In terms of it'll cost you more than standard bridging." Now, he had the right attitude. He's going to borrow this money for 6 months, but he'll be out in 3. So it's going to cost him 25 grand in fees. Well, why does he care? 275 plus 25, it stands him at 3, it's worth 450. Even if he puts it in an auction and only gets 4 for it, he'll clear £100,000. So when people say bridging's expensive, it's a means to an end. And in Fred's position, he's going to make £100,000 and literally cost him nothing, right? It's irrelevant what the cost is. Yeah. It's the opportunity that it presents, right? And that's the area of bridging and development finance that I enjoy getting involved in, because when I can do creative things with clients, I can allow them to do things they couldn't otherwise achieve. So below market, genuine below market, this one was because basically the owner hadn't paid the rent for 3 years and the mortgage company wouldn't take it off him. Yeah. And he had a very narrow window to expedite a sale personally and not have all the black marks against him. He still had some, but not as many. And that's what happened. So he'll clear a few grand, and it literally is a few grand, but he gets rid of the problem. And my client will make a lot of money. So we're all happy. So BMV is interesting. So genuine below market value, there has to be a genuine reason. And it's the lenders will know if it's not genuine. But we can do all the money, usually. There are other instances where we can lend the full purchase price. Title splits, which we talked about before. Yeah. So typically, you'll have them here in Blackpool, but they're typically in a lot of seaside towns. So 3-floor Victorian terraces that were split into flats years ago, but they're all on a single freehold. And typically you can pick these up for 200, 250,000 in this area, Morecambe, Scarborough, done a few in all of those areas. But when you split them into 4 flats, give them a light refurb with a kitchen and a bathroom, they're worth 100 grand each. So you're buying it for 200, 220, you're spending 50, 60, 280, worth 400 grand. And the other nice thing with title splits is, and I say to people, treat them as a refurb, but it's a paper refurb. It's paperwork, it's solicitors and architects doing a bit of work. It can't really go wrong. It's not like a refurb where you get the oh shit moment when all the asbestos falls off the wall that you didn't know was there.
Dry rot.
Or the dry rot, or the rising damp, and all the other things that weren't spotted till you went back to brick. None of that happens with this. And with a title split, we can lend 75% of the title split value.
Of the final value?
No, the title split. There might be 3 values here. One is the purchase price, 2 is the value after title split, and then 3 is the GDV after you've done the refurb.
Right, okay.
All right, so there's 3 values. So we can lend up to 75% of the title split value. So on the one for 220, and I've got a few of those going on at that sort of price level, They're probably worth 3 at title split
Mm-hmm.
and 450 after the refurb. But at 300,000 after title split, we can lend 75%. We can lend 225. That's the purchase price.
Exactly.
All right. Now, obviously, it does depend on how big that uplift is. But if it's between 30 and 40% coming back, the client basically gets either the full purchase price or very close to it. But that allows for momentum investing. Now, if you've got 100,000 and you need to put 10 grand into a deal on a title split or on a BMV, you can do 10 of them at once. Whereas if you're using your own money or other people's money, opium, you're stuck with doing a deal at a time.
And then, obviously, if you're going past 6, you don't then spend on stamp duty because it's a commercial deal. So
Absolutely.
you save yourself money that way as well.
Absolutely, exactly. Most of these deals will be classed as commercial. Not exclusively, but yes.
Yeah, most of them.
Exactly.
So definitely a good idea to look for wider and bigger jobs rather than just the low end of the market.
It's one of the reasons I got into Conteresi, because I've done a few smaller HMOs, 4, 5, 6 bed, and everybody's in that marketplace. Okay.
It's very popular at the moment, HMO.
It has been for years.
Yeah.
And it's a relatively easy step up from going from a single let to a 3 or 4 bed HMO. It's not a huge learning curve, but it's perceived that it is to go to Conteresi. And to be honest, it is. I'm a bit blasé because I've been involved in so many, but what we found, and we got quite a lot of the Conteresis off Rightmove, right? And we were looking at properties from around 350, 400 square metres and upwards. They were too small for the big boys, and it was too much of a jump for the people who were doing small HMOs. So it wasn't a saturated market, and it probably still isn't. So we didn't have much competition, which is why we could find the odd deal on Rightmove, Zoopla, whatever it was. In general, the sort of deals that me and you look at on a daily basis are not often on Rightmove. All right, because you can't get the value, right? So, we tend to deal mainly in off-market stuff where we've got a personal relationship somehow or other with a vendor, and those deals we can make work. And by using creative finance, it doesn't matter what your property strategy is, particularly, which we can use creative finance to expedite the speed at which you can do those things. It's obviously great. We're using leverage to its ultimate in this.
I think that's the information that all these courses that people go on, no matter who the supplier, whether it's Pin or Touchstone, they don't go into this that deeply. And it's a huge area in the market that you can buy huge buildings basically and turn around a business within 12 or 18 months where you're generating numbers, multiple units for families, multiple gains for your investment, and there'll be more people to look into supply financiers or investors because those are the deals they're looking for.
No, absolutely. Look, at the end of the day, the cheapest way of getting money is private investors, right? It's also normally less hassle once you've got that relationship. The problem is if you only have one of them, when you've got the deal, they may have just lent their money out to someone else.
Yeah.
Or it's tied up somewhere else. So you need a bank of them. And then you go and find a big deal and you might have to involve several of them because they all want to only go in for X. And then it's herding cats because they've all got different requirements in terms of the information they want, how involved they want to be, etc. And some will want to hold and some will want to flip, and it becomes complicated. The advantage of going to the market for lending is there's always money.
Yeah.
There's 170, 180 bridging lenders in the UK, and that's not all of them. There's some minute ones that no one knows about. I've got one or two, which might be Mr. and Mrs. Scoggins, who've got multi-millions, but only want to lend it through me because they know me. And most brokers will have their own little pet ones that no one else knows about. They don't know they exist, but they've all got their own niche criteria, and when it fits, they're great to work with. But in general, you've got this 150 plus group of lenders, and at the end of the day, they make money by lending money. They want to lend money, and there's money for everybody. As long as the deal works, there's always someone who will lend. We can get 100% on the sorts of projects I've been talking about. If someone's got adverse credit, just be upfront. There are lenders who will specifically lend to people with adverse credit. There's a bunch that don't, but there's nothing worse than going through the process and then finding out they had adverse. Just be honest in the first place.
Yeah,
it'll get found out.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if you are honest up front, people tend to appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And if it gets rid of all those people, it definitely wouldn't work for you.
It's better to get the awkward conversations out the way at the beginning as well, because who you're dealing with, and it builds that level of trust between the two people that are in that client relationship. So
absolutely. I say up front to people, look, I'm not judging. I don't give a monkeys. My job is to sort the best solution for you. And if you're not honest with me, I can't do that.
And can I ask, obviously from your point of view, obviously we have a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are potentially just getting into property. So do you think this is an option for somebody if it's the first time they're doing property, or do you think they need to build up a portfolio, or at least a bit of experience and kind of proof of what they can do before coming to someone like you?
Good question. I think it's actually one advantage of bridging in general is, I think with private investors, they tend, in my experience, they tend to track you for a while, especially on social media. They're tracking you because you're doing something. Otherwise, how would they know you existed? So you sort of need a track record to attract private finance. In bridging, there are lenders who will only work with experienced developers. There are lenders who don't care. And I don't mean it in the don't care, but it's not one of their criteria. They will work with first-time developers, first-time landlords. I just need to know. If you were doing something complicated, like a commercial conversion, you can still be a first-timer. If your contractor is experienced and does it through a JCT contract, then the lender is more interested in the substance of the contractor than they are in you, because it's the contractor who's going to be actually doing the work. So there are ways and means. There really isn't a problem. It's just talk to me. So first times, yes, right? On the title split, the people who do 75% want at least 2 previous properties. They want a decent asset and liability, etc. So they're quite picky. But there are people who'll do up to 90% of purchase price who don't have that criteria. And there are other people who'll do a bit lower, yes, but they'll take adverse. So my job's to place you in the right place. Now, that's the gold standard, 100% of the purchase price. But if you don't tick the boxes, I can probably get you 90%, which is still better than the normal 75%, right? So it's all about finding out all that information. And as you said, getting that right team. And that is, it's not just me. The biggest problem I see in all the deals I get involved in, one of the biggest, is solicitors. The deal that completes tomorrow, this BMV, the client solicitor is suboptimal. Okay? He chose him because he was the cheapest. And he's not a solicitor, he is a licensed conveyancer, which is even worse because they're not used to dealing with bridging companies. Now, this deal nearly fell out because of the nature of the beast with the mortgage company repossessing. They should have completed last month, and that was the deadline. Now, they fortunately extended it, but because of the vendor solicitor was terrible and my client solicitor was terrible, this has dragged on 6 weeks longer. Well, what's happened? 6 weeks more interest on the repossessed mortgage. SDLT just went up. My client's bridge has gone up. All right, it probably cost you, my client, 15,000 quid, this 5-week delay.
Jesus.
So getting the cheapest is definitely not the best.
You should have paid £1,000 more and gone to the one I recommended. Simple as that.
What do they say? Nice stuff ain't cheap and cheap stuff ain't nice.
No, absolutely.
And I think as well, sometimes when people are investing that much money and they go, oh, I'm not going to spend that little bit more on somebody that's a higher standard, but they're expecting it to go as smoothly. You need to lower your expectations, don't you? You really, really do. And it's understandable when people are like, we need to cut costs in some areas, but especially with solicitors and things like that, you want someone that is going to really understand the type of deal that you're doing as well, because if they're not going to be, if they don't understand, it's probably going to take longer.
It probably won't work.
No.
And there's no point doing certain things on the cheap. And again, back to the team thing that you were talking about. I had a discussion with a client, it was a title split, and they wanted me to talk to their accountant. So we had a three-way, and the accountant insisted that the client did it in a certain way. I said, you can't do it that way. And the accountant initially got up on his high horse. How dare you impugn my integrity and my ability to say my client tax not? I said, no such thing. I said, but if you don't structure it like I'm telling you to structure it, the lender won't lend. It's nothing to do with tax efficiency or anything else. If you haven't, because with the title split, you've got the freehold and the leasehold, and the lenders prefer those to be linked, those two companies. And it just, the main reason for it makes the process simpler for them if they have to repossess. They don't have to go after two separate entities.
Yeah.
They can go for this one because it owns this one. And it's very simple, they won't lend. So I said, you can be as clever as you want with the tax savings, but your client can't borrow the money.
Yeah, it's one of the first things that I found out. Setting up your limited company, there's SIC codes.
Yeah.
If you don't have the correct SIC code, mortgage companies won't even talk to you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mortgage brokers won't even talk to you. It was somebody that kind of down and went, right, yeah, you can lend, not a problem, but you have to have this SIC code, that SIC code.
These choice of six, and if it's not one or two of those, you can't have the money.
So I just put all of them on. And it works.
Yeah, it
And
does.
it completely changes it. But little things like that you can miss out very easily.
Yeah, but if no one tells you as well, especially if you're new, that this is, I feel like this is a huge problem, because a lot of people, they want to do it, but there's little tiny bits of information, all those minute little things, so important and integral to decisions that other people will make who are way more informed than those people.
This is a problem when people go on courses. They say, oh, you have to set up your limited company. And you can do it through Companies House for £14 or whatever it is. But you have to make all those decisions. And it takes about 20 minutes, but there's lots of decisions. If you get that wrong, you can change them later. But it makes a huge difference to how you can operate that business and how you can actually get funding from private investors. They will still look for those SIC codes because they're used to them themselves.
No, absolutely.
It's all about getting it checked and rechecked and get the right kind of advice. And that's where you come in quite often, and where networking really helps, because you get involved with talking to all these different types of people. Because I think we met 2 or 3 times on networking in the Northwest, but we didn't really get talking until we were talking about commercial to resi. And it's just things like that I suddenly realised that process, that 5-minute process, is very simple and it works. Finding something that fits it is more difficult, but once it does, then yeah, the phone number is just there. And it's things like that you wouldn't have got by just doing the generic courses that are online, because nowadays it's all e-learning. Nobody's actually there to take you through it step by step.
Holding your hand a little bit.
Yeah. And you need
everyone needs that.
Yeah.
No, you do. And also, a lot of the minute technical stuff around it, it's not sexy, it doesn't sell courses.
No.
All right? It's a bit like, one of my bugbears is sources. Okay? They sell the sourcing courses because it's an easy way to get into property with quotes, no money. Okay? Sort of gloss over the
1,500 quid to £2,000 it costs.
Yeah, but no, and they gloss over all the requirements that go with it. But even if they do cover that, none of them teach them how to stack a deal. You get all this crap from sourcing agents, and you look at it and you think, well, that's just wrong.
So it's always better to have a sourcer that invests in property themselves, got a portfolio, and somebody that has just got a surplus of deals, because there are always deals to be had. We are always getting offered deals that we just haven't got the time for, and it's something like that we need to. That's the only reason why we set up the sourcing side, is because it's a done-for-you service that we provide to investors, because they haven't got the time either.
No, absolutely, and you're in an ideal position really, because you're known in the area, you do a lot of networking, a lot of social media, etc., and do it very well as well. You can't cope with them yourself, so you can outsource them, but you can also provide a turnkey service. Whereas if I was acting as a sourcing agent, I could potentially source the sites and potentially source the money for them, but I can't provide a turnkey service at the back end, because I don't have a build team, a maintenance team and all those other things. So it's horses for courses. But it works really well for you, because depending on who it is and what it is, if they're going to hold, you'll potentially manage it for them afterwards as well.
Exactly. That's our ideal.
So you get, absolutely it is. So you get, several bites of the pie, not just the sourcing slice that the normal sourcer gets.
Yeah, it's all good stuff being able to talk to the right people at the right times, and also making sure they're actually following all the rules and regulations that are actually in place.
Yes.
Which a lot of people don't really know about. that we're part of NAPSA, and 2-3 years ago that didn't exist.
No.
And it was a bit like the Wild West, where people just getting money taken off them for all kinds of reasons. Yes. We only ever take cash off somebody for a deal once it completes, because why would we want money off them up front? And we don't send a full list of things. So it's things like that you need to be wary of.
Absolutely.
So in your experience from the commercial to residential, as the market has changed after COVID, a lot of offices aren't being required anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And offices have lots of windows.
Yes.
They usually have lots of parking.
Yes.
And fairly straightforward from an architectural point of view to split them up into flats.
Yes.
So is there anything else that you would advise people to be looking for? I know you're saying about 300 square meters and above, 500 square meters. I think we spoke about before. Is there anything else they need to take into account?
Well, things have changed. When we started doing these 6 years ago, the permitted development rules were different. They're still there, but they've changed. Now, we used to use a thing called Class O, which was office to resi. And the nice thing with Class O was you could do it under permitted development, but there were no restrictions after you'd done it.
Right.
So when we were doing it in cheaper areas, so for example in Bolton, at the time a one-bed flat in Bolton was probably 50 or 60k, right? So we do one in Bolton, and if we built one-bed flats, we couldn't make the money on it. They were only worth 50 or 60k. It was probably costing us that to build the flat and buy the building.
Well, that was one of the reasons why we couldn't do a deal on a prom in Blackpool, because the flats in Blackpool are still 50, 60 grand.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the issue.
However, if you make a commercial HMO out of it, you're now getting a yield-based valuation, probably 12%-ish in the northwest. It depends where. But if you're getting, let's keep it simple, £100 a week for an ensuite, and it's a lot more than that these days.
Yeah.
When I was doing it, that's roughly what we were getting. So that's 5,200 a year. And if, again, keep it simple, 10% yield, that's 52k. An ensuite bedroom is worth 52k on a commercial valuation. Well, I can get two of those in the same space as a one-bed flat. So a one-bed flat's worth 50k, the two HMO bedrooms are worth 104. What am I building? Now, under Class O, we could get planning permission to build flats, 3 beds usually, 2 large additional rooms that were pre-plumbed. Get it signed off, issue 1 AST, so planning's now done with, building controls done with, and then do a C to C4 conversion. So the 3-bed flats become 5-bed flats, so they all become 5-bed HMOs. We could do that under PD as well. The seduced would not like it, but they couldn't stop us. The new permitted development that you've got for commercial conversions, whilst it's opened up the scope of properties that are available to be converted, so it's all Class E properties, and a load of stuff that was in other classes is now in Class E, you lose your PD rights once you've done it.
Right, okay.
Okay, so now it's much harder. So now you really are building flats and not begging around doing HMOs. And because it's PD, it's well worth it, because it's so much less hassle on the permitted development than it is going through the planning process. So really all you're looking at is what are 1-bed flats worth in the area, because these days it probably needs to be 120k plus.
Yeah.
If it's not over 100,000 for a 1-bed flat, it won't work. Even with my quick method of doing it in 2 or 3 minutes. Forget all that. If the flat's not worth over 100k, it just won't work in that area.
Yeah.
That helps you find your areas very quickly.
Yes, it does. Manchester, Chesters, go across the other side, Leeds, etc. Yes, it'll work. But if you go to the outskirts of Manchester, to the poorer areas, it doesn't work. That's where we used to build HMOs, right? But as long as you're in a good area in terms of house prices, yes, absolutely. And yes, you're right. Offices are perfect. They're easy to secure the perimeter generally, or they've very often got fences anyway. So your gear on site tends to be a bit securer. It's easier for deliveries and stuff like that. They tend to be oblongs. They tend to have lots of windows. They tend to have lots of ceiling height. So they're very simple to convert. And yes, absolutely, they work. The other one that's very popular is the shop with uppers.
Yeah.
That's a saturated market. Because a shop with potentially 2 flats above it is what's taught on all the Conservation training courses as the starter one.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the very
So
first
everybody,
course.
it's the sourcing that's the problem with those, because everybody wants them.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, obviously, you've just sold your very first property that you purchased. So what's your journey kind of been what mindset were you in? What was your kind of setup in life like when you made that decision to purchase that first property and kind of start
I spent 35 years in IT.
Okay.
I started life as an analyst programmer for a major corporation, and after 4 or 5 years set up my own IT business, built that up, 35 staff, 3 million turnover, sold that, and then I ran a bunch of IT businesses as MD for other companies. So I used to run the UK for a Swedish company, for example. And 24 years ago, 2001, I was doing some IT consultancy for a building contractor in Crewe. And I got quite friendly with the boss. And they were going bust. And they were part way through a conversion of a little 2-up-2-down terrace on West Street in Crewe. And they were converting it to 2 flats, so an upstairs and a downstairs. And he was desperate for some money so he could control the liquidation. We had 50k in the bank, and so I did a deal. And I was an IT guy, I didn't know anything about property, I knew it was a decent price, so we bought the first one in Crewe for 50k cash. And like I say, I kept it for 20 odd years. And it continued on in IT, and then a few years later, had a bit more cash and went and bought another one. And that sort of just progressed. So we had a number of buy-to-lets, they're all in Crewe. Mainly because Crewe's cheap, and I got lucky with the first letting agent I found, managing agent. They were really good, and so we've been with them ever since. So that went all hunky-dory, no problem. And then about 7 years ago, I started seeing this stuff on the interwebs about property and PIN and all this stuff. And I realised there's a bit more to property than saving up 50k and buying them for cash.
Yeah.
I didn't know any better. Well, you don't, do you?
No, you don't.
It's not taught.
No.
You know.
They give you a little tease, don't they, on the talk? You go for the talk, they tell you just enough, but not enough real information.
Yeah, but you don't even get that.
No.
You know? So you need Rich Dad Poor Dad to explain it to you.
Yeah.
I was getting a bit jaded with IT, to be honest. I was running the UK for a Swedish company, and I was bored with it, is the truth. It was easy living, I got good money, and so I had a word with my wife, and I said, look, I quite fancy doing this property thing. And I had 2 choices. I could pay someone like Simon Zucci 20 grand a year to go on his mastermind course.
Which isn't 20 grand a year anymore.
Well, sure it's not. Or I could get a job. I'm a cheapskate, so I got a job as a BDM, so salesman, for a small private lender. And I was the only salesman. The small private lender was the guy who owned it, whose money it was, his CFO, a young lady doing the admin, and me. So it really was a micro company, okay? He had 10 million quid, and my job was to go out and lend 10 billion quid on bridging and development finance. So I did. Went all over the UK, Scotland, Northern Ireland, up and down the UK, pin events, etc. And after 12 months, I'd lent his 10 million quid. So I'm getting more money. No, we need to wait for the money to come back to recycle it. So basically, I sort of done myself out of the job.
Yeah.
Left on good terms. But I've met 600 people in that 12 months in my little black book. And some of those I got on with. I was a Conservation guy. So went to chat to them. We decided we'd start doing it. I'd work with them. And that's how I got into Conservation. So I went from a bunch of single lets to Conservation in one foul swoop, effectively. And it was just accidental networking.
Yeah,
They put several deals across my desk. We hadn't done them all, we'd done some of them. But I knew who they were, I knew the deals worked, and blah, blah, blah. And I knew what lenders were after. Now it was one lender, because obviously I'd only worked at one lender, but I got some inclination of the lending process, the way they underwrite things, because I've been in the underwriting meetings, again, micro company, yes, so you get to see all the aspects of it, yeah. And so that was it. And the reason we sold the first one in Crewe a few years ago was I didn't want any single lets in the portfolio. It didn't suit what we'd done. You know, the apart hotels look after themselves, effectively glorified SA. It's a bit like HMOs for SA, really, isn't it?
Yeah, because a apart hotel is basically just service accommodation with a reception, somewhere to eat, and sometimes a gym. And that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
the same sort of thing. It's the same thing. Yes, it is. And it's also no planning again if you're doing it in an existing hotel or B&B. And you probably gathered the theme. I don't like planning if I don't need it.
No.
So that's basically my story.
Yeah.
As you probably gathered from this conversation, and you know from previous conversations, I'll sit and talk about property all day. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah.
I like networking because you're learning all the time.
Yeah.
I think I know a bit, but you meet other people and they've done their bit, you learn a bit more.
Yeah.
And it's all good knowledge.
And as we know, it doesn't matter where you are. If there's a Costa somewhere near or a good coffee house, that's where you can have a meeting.
Absolutely. I joke all the time. I've got an office in every town in the UK. It's called Costa.
Yeah. And sometimes that massively just makes a difference to, you know, it's easy to ring people and go on Zoom and stuff like that, but having half an hour, and to sit down with someone with a brew can make the world of difference and really kind of start a relationship off on a foot that it couldn't necessarily be started on over a call, because sometimes people can come across really differently on a camera and not face to face. You can't read body language, you can't read lots of different things. So it's, even if you meet them in person once and then you work together and you don't see each other face to face for 6 to 12 months, but you've had that face to face contact, you've kind of sussed each other out, and you get that feel for, that's the someone that I want to work with.
Well, that's the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's no like trust, isn't it?
Definitely.
And this is very much people business.
Yeah.
You cannot do it alone.
No.
You just can't. Even people like Robert Kiyosaki, who's got 3,000 properties or whatever he's got these days. He's got a whole team of people underneath who do stuff. You can't do it alone. No. You need that professional team. You need your broker, you need your solicitor, you need your accountant, you need a builder, and the list goes on. Mm-hmm. It's not a small list.
And that's why small businesses struggle, because they usually are just one person or two people and trying to do everything and trying to do it the same standard as everybody else, so that they look on the same level, or they look that their value is there. But that's extremely difficult.
It is. And one of the biggest problems with small businesses is people are loath to delegate or outsource. And you have to. Especially in something like this, because you need professionals involved.
Yeah, and we can't be professionals in every single aspect of what we do.
Absolutely.
And you waste so much time trying to do, like, when we do stuff like plumbing, building websites and stuff.
Yeah, I think we did it in 48 hours.
We did your website in 48 hours. It took me 4 months to do mine. I think it was the difference when it's your own. You're like, oh, everything's got to be perfect. Yours, I managed to throw out. I've never seen anything quite like it. But there are professionals in every industry, and they should be used at times, especially if you've got the finances to do it. And sometimes as well, if you know enough that investment is going to pay off and you're going to get the ROI back from it as well. But no, it's so important to expand your network all the time. The people that I meet that don't network, they're missing so many opportunities. Yeah. And it's not even that first time you meet people, it's just staying in people's minds. And they might be having a conversation 6-7 months later with someone and go, oh my God, I met that person. Oh, and I've written down their information and this is the person. Sometimes not an overnight thing. It takes time for things to kind of fester, and you have to let the universe kind of do its thing, don't you?
No, you absolutely do.
Yeah, because let's face it, no matter what happens, if you're in a room with other people, so many millions of things have happened to get you in that room at that one particular time. And how many times do you intend to get to a meeting and there's a problem with the car or traffic or anything else that kind of stops you? So once you actually meet somebody and you think along the same lines, make sure you get the details to make sure you do something with that.
Absolutely.
And don't just have a pocket full of business cards and never look at them again, because that's what happens as well.
No, it is. No, follow-up's absolutely key. It is. And what you were saying, I mean, I really enjoy, after a networking event, meet a few people, and it's always, let's have a Costa.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to look them in the eye, for me to decide whether I want to work with them and vice versa. And it's got to be a two-way street. And to be honest, I think it's partially an age thing as well. You do get a bit longer in the tooth. But when people come to me for finance, you know, I'll send them a document saying, right, this is a list of what I need. And if they can't be bothered putting that together, then I can't be bothered going looking for finance.
No.
Yeah.
And it's boundaries.
They're not serious.
It's boundaries, isn't it, as well? Like, as somebody, I'm newer in business, and I'm more than happy to admit that with my own business. And I remember that first year or those first few months, and I'd be bending over backwards, and I've not even had a proper first meeting with this person, and there's not even anything that's guaranteed or a guaranteed plan or income or anything. And I'm there spending like 3 or 4 hours preparing like a blooming document to give them, and that's not how it works. If you can't
No,
even...
it's very difficult when you start.
Yeah,
you
definitely.
You obviously, you do want to go above and beyond.
Yeah, you do.
To get cracking.
You do.
As I say, it's easier when you're a bit longer in the tooth. I can't be
Yeah, no.
Right. If you can't put some effort in at your end,
Exactly.
why the bloody hell should I?
Yeah.
Both of you are in it for a reason. You both have obviously your roles, but it doesn't work unless you both do what you need to put in and what the agreement is.
No.
So if someone wanted to work with you, how would you want to work with people, and how can they get in touch with you?
Right, the best way to get in touch with me is to send me an email. And the reason I say that is it'll sit in my inbox till I deal with it, and that is my to-do list. If you drop me a WhatsApp or a text, once it's off the screen, it tends to disappear. So send me an email. You've probably gathered from this conversation we've been having, I'll talk to anybody about property. Enjoy it. I know a little bit, and I can probably help.
And then we're going to post that information in the description below, so that even people that have missed it can find it again.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
It's been lovely to
I've lost my virginity.
It's not too scary, is it? So that's the end of today's episode. Property Legacy Podcast will bring you another episode in another couple of weeks.
To support Property Legacy, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, and we've got a brand new website. You can go on there and find out more about your hosts, how to get involved with the podcast, and any future events that we may be involved in as well.
You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Please like, subscribe, and give us some reviews and feedback on what you want to see on future episodes.
Thank you so much for supporting us, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.